What's up, guys? Shawnthebro here. We are here again for another episode. This time we are doing a first-person shooter tutorial. It's been one of the top requested, if not the top requested, outside of the Super Smash Bros. Tutorial. So I figured, why not go ahead and get that started as well. So we're going to focus on sprinting today and then livening up your main level here. I figured it looks pretty good now as compared to the regular white blocks that you get. So I want to show you kind of how to do that and liven up your stuff pretty easily. So none of this is necessarily anything that's going to stay for the tutorial, but it'll stay as a nice little test area for anything we want to test on. So just want to do a quick do a quick intervention here. So in the last episode, you guys were following. I had some follow-ups about the desk situation, and yes, I'm still on the floor. I ordered the desk, as I told you last time, and it should be here tomorrow. So I'll be up and off the floor. So I apologize for the audio for anyone listening, and thank you for those people who cared enough to mention to follow up and ask me if I got my desk or not. No, I'm still on the floor, but next episode, and even as early as tomorrow, I should be good to go. But yeah, so today we're going to focus on sprinting and lining up your level. So I'm going to start with what I always start with, if you're not familiar with my tutorials, just in case, if you're new. I don't want to leave anything out. So we're going to focus on making a new project. So if you download Unreal and Visual Studio, which is where you're going to be doing your coding. If you haven't already done either of these, I will put the links in the description down below. You can go ahead and check them out. And when you go to the links, it'll be the download pages for Unreal Engine and Visual Studio, which are what you're going to need to make this project come to life. Okay, so once you've downloaded those, you can open the editor, or you can open one of the default projects, either way. And when you do, so this is if you were to open a default project, and this is if you were to open the editor on its own, and that's my computer fan running in the background. You'll either get a window that looks like the one in the back here, or one that looks like one in the front here. These are the other projects I've done, so you probably won't have these here, but you might have some templates here depending on what version you download and things like that. Anyway, you can go to New Project or File New Project. It'll bring you to the same New Project right here. It'll bring you to the same page. It'll bring you to this little window. You're going to want to click C++ as opposed to Blueprint, because if you click the C++ tab, then you'll be able to write code more easily than if you were to type the Blueprint. You can actually add code later to the Blueprint, but it's a lot harder and a lot more complicated, and C++ kind of sets it up for you when you use the template. If you're not familiar, Blueprint is visual scripting, so it's actually just kind of you're connecting things in the editor to simulate code flow. So C++ is the code itself you'll actually be using. In this case, we're going to be using the first person template. You can read about it if you want, but basically, if you just click the C++ tab and then the first person template, you will be good to go. It'll make all you need to get started. You can leave these things alone unless you would plan for it to be a mobile first person shooter. You can keep maximum quality. First person shooter is one of those ones I would definitely recommend for the highest possible quality. And I would definitely recommend with starter content, especially if you're not familiar with Unreal. It'll help you get a lot more invested in your project really quick, because you can do cool things like the background here. All this stuff is starter content. Okay, and then lastly, you just change your name to your project, change your folder, and create project. I've already done that, as you can see, so I'm going to close out this tab. Now, when you start, this will all be white blocks. Like, there'll be a bunch of cubes here, they'll be white, this is white, the walls and floor are white, and then this is just a cube. I'm going to show you how to change some of that so you can spice up your environment. So when you launch it, you should see this still, and if you click, you should be able to shoot. You should be able to use WASD to move around, and you can look around, do all that good stuff, and you can jump with space. So you should see that right off the bat by just having the template, which is awesome. It's a fantastic starting point, and that's part of what's so great about Unreal. They have really good templates. So if you want to liven up your area a little bit so you're not just looking at some white space, it's kind of ugly and doesn't really provide you with a lot of context, like you could kind of set up you could set up as many test levels as you want. So what I'd recommend doing is you can click on any object in the space here, and all you gotta do is go here where it says static mesh. You can change the shape of an object. Like if I wanted this to be a cube, then you see that the ground, I'm actually on like a globe, which is fine if you want to keep that. I'm not going to keep it, but there you go. And then the material is what actually changes what it looks like. So you'll see for this I have the cobblestone, pebble, whatever. So you can just do the drop down, select whatever you want. Okay. So go ahead and play with that if you want. Make a nice little scene for yourself. You can play around with the individual settings as well. Like I changed one of the shapes to a chair / couch thingy. And then I made this little pillar. I turned collision off and made some things look like bushes. So you can kind of play around with it and get a nice little environment for yourself. But that's just something extra I wanted to add. It's nothing you have to do or really that's going to impact today's video. I just figured it would be a nice little thing to have. What we're actually going to be doing for today's video is sprinting. I kind of went back and forth in my head for a bit about what would be the most important aspect for a first-person shooter. Like, what would be the first thing you'd want to learn? And in the tutorial, there's no way to sprint or move faster in any way. So I know I don't have an animation for it yet, but hopefully you can see this is me normally walking right here. And this is me sprinting. Hopefully you can see it gets a lot faster. Okay, so we're going to make that happen today. The first thing you're going to need to do is actually in the editor. So stay in your editor in your new project, hit Edit, Project Settings, and then go to Input. In Input, you'll have things called action mappings and axis mappings. Action mappings are buttons that you're going to press one time and get a result, like fire, jump, things like that. Axis mappings are things that you have to hold to move, like looking around the screen, or WASD where you're moving left, right, up, and down. We're going to want action mapping for sprint because we just want to have it, you press it, and when you release it, you stop sprinting. Or you could have it where you press it and you sprint until you're out of stamina, whatever you want to do with it. Add an action mapping. So hit this little plus sign. It'll be empty, or it might put a default name in, excuse me. And then you can just put sprint. And then you have this drop down box where you can type whatever you want. And then I type left shift because left shift is usually what a lot of games use to sprint. And then you can close out of this. I'd recommend saving all. You don't technically have to, but Unreal has given me issues in the past where I haven't saved it after doing that and I couldn't access it in the code. That's all we need to do in the editor. What we need to do now is go into the code base. So open Visual Studio for the first time if you haven't already and open this solution. Or, more easily, you can click this little button right here, Show or Hide the Sources panel. It's right under the Add New button. Click C++ Classes, FPS Tutorial, and then you can double-click your FPS Tutorial character here. And I'm going to close this because, actually I'm going to go back here and close it because I don't need it anymore. But, if you go to your Visual Studio now, and I can close this one. If you go to your Visual Studio now, you should see that you have your FPS tutorial character CPP and FPS tutorial character.h files. What they are right now doesn't really matter that much, especially if this is the first video you're watching from me. If you want to know a little bit more about these files themselves and source control and all your basic setup for your project, you can actually check out the third-person tutorial that I'll link in the iCard in the top right now. That will have a lot more if you want to get started on all that. But right now, I figured you guys would just want to put in some functionality and see how it works. If you want to go over the actual code, like I said, go check that out. That'll show you a lot more of, it'll go a little bit deeper into what the code actually means and things like that. But don't worry about this too much. Basically, just know the header file, or the .h, is where you put all things that you want to define. So, for example, we're going to need a function. We're going to need two functions, sprint and stop sprinting. And we're also going to need the functionality in here in the CPP file. So the header file is where we define them. It's called defining it. When you create it and basically tell the computer and or compiler that this thing is going to exist. And then in the CPP file or C++ file, this is where you actually explain things. In the CPP file or the C++ file, this is where you're actually going to basically explain the code and do all your logic. So our logic in this case is going to be what makes the character sprint. The header file is what is going to tell the project that we have a function that it allows us to do that. So in the header file, and if you've never coded before, there's going to be a lot here. The first-person shooter tutorial in particular is pretty heavy, so that's why I didn't want to get into explaining it all today. It's going to be a lot if you try and take it just one line at a time. So just kind of follow what I'm doing. So if you're looking at the header file, I haven't touched any of this. You should see all this. The class A FPS tutorial character, this is what I named my project, and then character on the end of it. So if you named your project like shooter tutorial, then yours would be shooter tutorial character. Okay? So when you see this, keep scrolling down. You'll see class, and then you'll see float. You'll see void. Once you start seeing these are functions. Once you get into the functions, just add 2 functions here, sprint and stop sprinting. Basically, functions just organize your code. So you'll see they already have some in the template for firing the gun, resetting some orientation in virtual reality mode, moving forward, moving right, all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to add 2 to that. We're going to add sprint. We're going to add stop sprinting. Because in my case, I want to when I hold the button, I want to sprint, and then when I release the button, I want to stop sprinting and go back to walking. You could change it up however you want to handle it, but that's the way I decided I think is the best for this. So, call them whatever you want. I call them sprint and stop sprinting. When you go into your C++ file, I just scroll all the way down because I know that there's a ton of code in here that is from the template class. And for some reason, my line numbers aren't showing up. You'll probably have line numbers in your Visual Studio. Mine are not working for some reason. But there's a lot of lines of code here, as you can tell. So I usually just scroll all the way to the bottom so I can differentiate between template code and my own code. Then go ahead and do me a favor and make these functions. So these are the functions we just defined in the header file, sprint and stop sprinting. So void just means it's not going to return anything. Not important for now if you don't know coding. I will get into that later. Just copy the syntax. This log means it prints out a message to your output log. So you can see what you're currently doing. I'll show you more of that when we actually get into the game. But this is just for debugging. You don't need to include this line right here if you don't want to. But this says we are now sprinting, and when we release the button, it's going to say we have stopped sprinting. This is what actually makes us sprint. Get character movement, walk speed equals 1500, max walk speed. So what we're doing is increasing how fast the player actually moves, and then when we release the button, we're decreasing that speed, or that value, back to the original speed of the walking value. So we're saying, hey, you now walk this fast, or hey, you now only walk this fast. Okay, and depending on your version of Unreal, and this is actually true, so be careful, watch out for this. If you're using the newest version of Unreal, I believe you'll need to include this file. So if you scroll all the way back up to the top of your FPS tutorial character.cpp, see if you have this file included at the top. If you have this line of code added, include game framework / character movement component.h. If you don't have this, add it right now. Add it right under XR motion controller base or anywhere in this section. Just add this line right here. This is what gets you access to the character or the get movement component right here that you're using in these functions. So if you get an error saying something along the lines of you don't have permissions to use this, and actually I can't comment it out because it'll break other things, but if you get an error anywhere and you have red squiggly line under any of these things, go ahead and make sure you have that include, because depending on the version of Unreal you have, the FPS template doesn't always have that include file. I learned that recently. So if you don't have that, just go ahead and add it right at the bottom here. That way you have access to it. Includes are just references to other files so that you can access functions and variables from them. Okay? And then there's one last thing we have to do, and we'll be ready to go, ready to test out the sprint. So if you go through your CPU file, scroll down a bit, go and find the function setup player input component if you want, and you can't find it by just scrolling. You can do Control F, and you'll bring up a little find here, and then you can just go ahead and say current document and search for it. Setup player input component, and it'll bring you right there, as you can see. Okay, so here you go. If you go to setup player input component, there's a ton of stuff in here, but these are basically just binding actions to your controls. That's all they're doing. So what they do actually is, or let's say in non-programming terms, is they look for a value that you have in your project settings. They take either a key press or releasing of a key, and then they call a function. So what this means is it looks to see if jump is an option in your project settings, which it will be. If you go edit project settings, input, jump. So it says, oh, find jump. Jump is right here. And then if I press the button for jump is, whoops. If I press the button for jump is spacebar, or any of those other ones, depending on if you're using different controllers. So if I press the spacebar, call this function, call the jump function. Okay, simple enough, right? So in our case, instead of doing any of this, we want to add sprinting functionality. So you can literally copy the jump one, or copy, a better one would be copy the on fire function right here. Paste it wherever you want. I pasted mine right here. And then change jump or fire, whatever it is, to sprint, or whatever your project settings option for sprint is. So mine is called sprint. If this was called sprinting, this text in here would be sprinting. Okay? IE press means when I press the button was left shift. So when left shift is pressed, call this function. We want to call the sprint function that we just made down below. Okay? And then basically you do the exact same thing for releasing of sprint. You still look for the same term. You do IE released instead of IE pressed. And then you call stop sprinting instead of sprint. And then you can save your project, build your solution. If you get any errors down here, make sure you fix them before you continue. And if you don't know how to fix them, you can comment down below or join my Discord. We have about 30 people right now, I think, and everybody kind of helps each other out because there's a lot of issues that people have when doing this because, you know, they've never done it before. You'll see I run into issues sometimes when I'm doing these tutorials even. So, and these are things that I've done many times before for work. So it's very easy to get turned around, so don't get discouraged by that. But you can come join the Discord. I have a link in the description if you want to, and I'll be able to help you with more specific issues that you have, and I can share photos and videos if it helps as well. But there you go. Once you've built successfully, it'll say build 1 succeeded, 0 failed, 0 up to date, 1 skipped, whatever it is. Just make sure it says 1 succeeded and 0 failed. The other ones should be okay. Okay, and then you're done with this for now. Or you're done with this for the rest of the episode. So all you want to do is open up the editor again, or just move to it if you kept it open like I did. Hit X, close this boy out, and then here you go. So now you have your level that you want, and you have the functionality ready. Make sure you compile in here, because Unreal is supposed to pick up when you rebuild the engine or when you build the project, but it definitely doesn't always do that. If you hit build, you'll have a little pop-up window that says compile complete or compiling in the bottom right. As long as the compile doesn't say fail, then you're good to go. It only takes about 5 seconds. You won't be able to see mine because mine actually pops up on a different screen over here. But it'll say compiling complete and then a little green check mark. And once it's done, that means your code that you just built or that code that you just wrote is inserted into this project essentially. So you can press play. And there you go. Now, if you press left shift, you should run significantly faster. Be like a little madman running around town. Okay? And if you want to show the project, like, you see how mine opens in this separate window that I can move around? If you want to do that, as opposed to having it in this viewport, click on this arrow next to the play button, hit New Editor window. There you go. And there you go. So now you have a functioning first-person shooter tutorial that you can use, and honestly, it's pretty fun. Like, the movement feels good, whether you're sprinting or not. The looking is nice, the sensitivity, and you even have a jump in there. So we're going to do a ton with this project. We're probably going to put double jumping in next episode or something like that, or at least increasing the height of the jump. And we're definitely going to put switching weapons out for different weapons pretty soon. And maybe switching the bullets to, like, regular bullets or something like that. We'll put in some, a bunch of stuff and make this a real first-person shooter project that you can use and show off and be proud of. But hopefully that's enough for now, guys. I know it's a bit of a longer episode, so thanks for bearing with me. I appreciate it, and thank you, seriously, all of you who were asking me to do this tutorial. I had probably 20 to 30 people over the last 3 or 4 months who mentioned a first-person shooter tutorial, so I want to thank you guys. We're up to about 4 or 5 subscribers a day, which is just incredible. In over 8 years of 8 years of YouTube, I've never reached a limit that high. So again, seriously, thank you so much. Appreciate it. If you guys want to see more, I have a third-person third-person game tutorial. So like Uncharted, Gears of War. I have a fighting game tutorial like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and then I have a Super Smash Bros. Tutorial, which, yeah, it's pretty much self-explanatory. But I have those tutorials you can go check out, as well as some random programming tutorials for you. So go check them out if you want to see more or want to learn a different game type. And lastly, all I have to say, guys, is thank you so much for watching. Please, 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 if there's anything you do, please just subscribe. That's the most important thing, most helpful thing you can do to me. It tells me that you're interested in watching this type of video. And of course, it just helps me out and makes me happy. I mean, I'm not even going to lie to you. It just feels good when I see subscribers every single day. So I appreciate that, guys. And, oh, lastly, because I forgot. I am starting Twitch streaming as well as Mixer streaming. If you're interested in checking me out. It's twitch.tv/Shawnthebro27, because apparently I made a Shawnthebro account when I was young and I can't get into it to switch my name. So if I was able to switch my name, you'll be able to see that I have a Shawnthebro account that has active videos and clips on it. But for now, I'm Shawnthebro27 on Twitch. If you could follow me on there or subscribe to me, whatever it's called on there, I would appreciate it. I just started this last week. And it's just something I wanted to do for a long time, and my internet never really allowed it, but now we can. So we're going to start doing some more videos on there. Right now, we've just been doing some multiplayer Apex Legends videos, but plan on doing a lot on there, as well as even live coding on there. If you guys are interested, we can do some coding challenges, and it would be a lot of fun. So that's all. That's my big finale for this episode, but just thanks so much, guys, and yeah, I'll see you next week for the third-person tutorial. Anyway, guys, I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you later.